Hi everyone, it's Adam with Miles Restoration, and today I've got a furniture flipping video for you, and it's going to be about flipping hotel or office furniture. So the first thing I did was I just went ahead and filled the old holes from the hardware, and I actually put a hole there for my new hardware, but I put it in the wrong place. So I just went ahead and filled everything and then re-drilled them after. After that, I got started cleaning, and I just used some crud cutter and a bucket of rinse water and washed everything off really good. So when it comes to sanding, an important question you have to ask is what kind of material are you working with? Sometimes office furniture can just be actual wood veneer that's skinned over like an MDF substrate or some kind of particle board. But that wasn't the case for this. This was actually all laminate, I'm pretty sure. So I ended up just scuff sanding everything with 220, and I'll go straight to a bonding primer from there, like Stix or BIN or one of those primers. So whenever I do fill hardware holes, I generally speaking like to just go ahead and drill the holes out and fill them as early as I can. That way I have as much, primer and material on top of that filler or bondo as I can. So this is a primer that a lot of Benjamin Moore places will carry, known as Stix. It's available at a lot of hardware stores, and it's a water-based acrylic urethane, I think. And basically, the the good thing about it is that it has a really good bonding ability. I find it can even bond to materials like tile or glass. And obviously, laminate it will definitely bond to laminate. The problem is that it takes a long time to develop that full like cure, which also with the cure will give it the better adhesion and the better sanding qualities that you get earlier with a lot of oil based and lacquer based primers. So that's the biggest downside that I've found about it is that it's just not very sandable early on. I'm also using a 308 tip with my Graco cordless aero sprayer, and I just like the Graco contractor gun. And you know, the important thing really is that like the reason that I use a 308 as opposed to a larger tip is not because it particularly lays the material out any better. I think a 210 will do just as good. It's or a 310. It's just that with a 308, you're kind of allowed more passes because there's less material coming out, so it's going to be a little bit harder to catch runs. Whereas I find with a 310 or even a larger like 311 or something like that, it's not as forgiving, and I can really only make one pass over it. And when you're shooting something like furniture, there's a lot of angles that have to really get covered. So it's just easier, in my opinion, to use a smaller tip. So that's actually a glazing putty that I'm using here. And if you've noticed, I use a lot of automotive products in this process, and that's something that's pretty normal for me. I like going to auto body stores and just buying filler and glazing putty in bulk. And it's just a lot cheaper that way, and I just find that I have a lot less difficulties as opposed to using wood filler. So this is a vinyl sealer. Well, actually a lacquer undercoater, but I basically think that it's a vinyl sealer that's made by Gemini. And I like using the vinyl sealer. I feel like it's definitely the superior primer, just from kind of the years of using this stuff, different primers and everything. It it develops a really hard kind of undercoat, and it's actually what's commonly used underneath lacquer. And because of that, it gets kind of a good like plasticky kind of build up to it, and I think it's really good for water resistance. And also, it sprays and sands really well. It's really easy to get a really good top coat finish with using lacquer undercoater. So as far as like primer compatibility goes, I've never had any issues with using vinyl sealer on top of another primer. I probably I try to avoid to spraying vinyl sealer directly on top of laminate because it's really made for millwork and for refinishing over other types of lacquer and other kind of polyurethanes and stuff like that. It's not really made for laminate, but I think it would be fine honestly, and I have done it in the past. But yeah, I just for the purposes of just trying to do what products are recommended to do, I like using a binding primer like Sticks, then applying the vinyl sealer and sanding the vinyl sealer back, and then putting my top coat on top of that. And after my first primer coat and my second primer coat, I'll usually get kind of like an inspection like I have now, and I'll shine it to where I can see the surface that I'm sanding really good and catch all of those little kind of imperfections in the paint job. So this is Sherwin Williams Gallery Series, and I believe it's like a satin finish. And the color is actually like a custom color. Basically, what happened is that I got the wrong color of gray mixed up, and I wanted to do like as close as I could to Benjamin Moore Smoke, but obviously we had already tinted the product. So what I did was I had them get as close as they could to Benjamin Moore Smoke, and it kind of ended up this teal color. It was pretty, but it's not quite Benjamin Moore Smoke, but it's definitely got a lot of more teal in it, and you'll kind of see that later. So the gallery series usually takes around 1 hour, uh, usually about an hour and a half to completely dry, to where I can sand it. And I usually just use Superfine by Surf Prep. I'll use a flat pad for the flat areas, and then for the curved surfaces, I'll use one of their thicker pads that's like kind of spongy. And yeah, I always use Superfine, basically sometimes very fine, and I just give it a wipe with a microfiber after I'm done, and I get ready for the next top coat. So the only difference here, other than spraying, is that I'm using a 308 still for the airless. And the only difference that I really changed in my booth is that I turned my biggest extractor fan off whenever I'm using water-based primers and water-based top coats, generally speaking. Not all the time. I left it on earlier for the primer. But a lot of the times I just turn it off because all of the dust that gets kicked up by using that large fan is just really kind of difficult to deal with when you're using a water-based product that takes a long time to dry. For vinyl sealer and for lacquer, it's not that bad because it just dries so quickly that it's dust-free, and in seconds, and and almost in minutes sometimes it's dust-free with lacquer. But with water-based products, they take a little bit longer to flash off. So if I leave that big fan on, it just drags a bunch of dust across the surface. I also take a landscape pump sprayer and I spray the floor with water before I paint. Pretty much every time. So these are the new hardware, and other than that, the nightstands are pretty much done. I'm going to get this hardware installed and get some pictures and get them uploaded to Facebook. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you like this kind of content.